What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Tait Talk's NBA podcast. This is episode 5, and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. Today, I'm going to do a mock draft, but not just any mock draft. I'm going to be reenacting the whole thing from the commissioner coming up and saying it. Obviously, not the commissioner, it's going to be me, but I'm going to have someone come up, say the pick. I'm going to react to these picks, and these picks are all picked by me. This is what I think will happen in the draft. No trades, but this is what I think will happen in the draft, who I think will get picked by who. I'm going to be talking about the players, how they fit on the teams, their comparisons, and things like that after watching the lottery last night for me. So yeah, let's just get right into it. Basically how it's going to work is I'm going to have the commissioner announce the pick, and then I'm going to react to it like it's the real draft. And so let's get right into it. What's up? Welcome to the NBA Draft. This is the 2019 NBA Draft. We're going to get underway shortly here. Today there's many players on the board. We're going to be looking at the top 14 picks with the commissioner coming out any minute to announce those picks. This draft is packed with talent from the most talked about prospect since LeBron James and Zion Williamson. To an amazing point guard like Ja Morant. You've got tons of talent coming into this draft, and it's after that, watching that surprising lottery the other night with the Pelicans with that 6% chance coming out and getting the number 1 pick, disappointing Knicks fans everywhere. But they come out with the number 1 pick. The Grizzlies come out with the number 2. You've got the Knicks at 3, the Lakers at 4, Cavaliers at 5, Suns at 6, Bulls at 7, Hawks at 8, Wizards at 9, Hawks at 10, Timberwolves at 11, Hornets at 12, the Heat with the 13th, and the Celtics with the 14th. And now, the commissioner's coming out. The first pick is in. Let's see who they get. With the first pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the New Orleans Pelicans select Zion Williamson, power forward, Duke. And no surprise there as we see Zion Williamson going number 1 to the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, it really wasn't a surprise. It was quite obvious he was going to go number 1. If he got passed up at number 1, it would have been some sort of mistake, must have been. But I mean, looking at Zion Williamson, he's got so much athleticism. I mean, he's really just a once in a generation prospect. With all his leaping ability, with his dunking ability, his second jump, really everything about him athletically is perfect. And then you look at his size, and he's basically J.J. Watt playing basketball, and with a 45-inch vertical. It's really unbelievable at his size what he's able to do. Obviously, his shooting is a question mark. Although he is an efficient shooter, it's will he be able to do it in the NBA range? Because in this day and age, you kind of have to have that shot. But the key is his shot is not broken. I think that's the big key, is that his shot can be improved, and I think will be improved. Another big factor that Zion brings to the now New Orleans Pelicans is he's gonna put butts in seats. I mean, if everyone wants to see Zion right now. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, you've heard of Zion, and I think it's really gonna be good for the Pelicans to get their tickets bought and their people to go to their games. Now, my biggest concern with Zion being on the Pelicans now is, one, it's a small market team. Is he really going to flourish there? We've seen big picks like Anthony Davis and what happens with them, and how he's kind of just stagnated and only won 5 playoff games in his 7-year career. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Zion. That's a big question mark. But my biggest thing with him going to the Pelicans is the Pelicans training staff is actually an NFL training staff, and that has correlated. You can see that the highest rate of injury is the New Orleans Pelicans, and I don't think it's a coincidence. And looking at a player with the athleticism of Zion getting put on a team with high injury rates, I think it's kind of scary. But maybe they'll pick it up now that they have Zion. They'll get a new training staff. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm going to move into my player comparison for Zion Williamson. And I mean, you could go anybody. A lot of people say Larry Johnson. A lot of people say Blake Griffin. A lot of people say LeBron James. Me, personally, I'm going to go Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley is my player comparison for Zion Williamson. From the passing ability at the big man, to the ball handling ability at the big man, to the scoring of the big men. I think Zion really fits Charles Barkley, but I think he's more athletic and he's quicker and he's better at most things. But I think that's my player comparison for him, and I think it'll be really interesting to see what the Pelicans do, whether they do have to trade Anthony Davis or whether they can keep him, and what they do get if they do trade him. We'll see, but they're telling me now that the second pick is in, and let's go to the commissioner and see what they get. With the second pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Memphis Grizzlies select Ja Morant, point guard, Murray State. Second pick, no surprise to me, but Ja Morant is going to go to the Grizzlies. Now, some people thought they might not go Ja Morant as they do already have Mike Conley, but I think they're looking to move off of Conley, an older player kind of on the way down, and move on to the new prototypical point guard in Ja Morant. I think Ja Morant's skill set will instantly translate to the NBA, whether it's his passing, shooting, or finishing. I think all of it will go to the NBA. I think he definitely has to bulk up a little bit, but I think if he does that, he'll be one of the top point guards already in the league. I think everybody noticed that the tournament really raised his draft stock, because before it, he was kind of, he was there, maybe a top 10 pick, and now we see him going second to the Grizzlies. I think it just shows how much he proved in that tournament. I think it's a great pick for the Grizzlies team. Now he's going to be able to be paired with Jaren Jackson, a really good duo that could happen. I really think it's a great pick for the Grizzlies. For me, my player comparison for him is Russell Westbrook. Not so much the shooting, obviously, because Ja Morant's a great shooter. Westbrook is a spotty shooter. But I think the sneaky athleticism as well as the playmaking ability is definitely Westbrook-esque. And I'm not saying he's going to be Westbrook, but I definitely think that's a fair comparison. Not saying that he's as good as Westbrook, but just looking at these player comparisons that I'm going to do are just looking at what I think they could be as a ceiling. Now, the next pick is going to be going to the New York Knicks. Now, they're on the clock, but they obviously are not happy with the third. I mean, you are happy with it, but you're not happy with it because they really wanted that number one, really wanted Zion, but obviously fell to this number 3 pick. Now, there's plenty of talent still on the board. You've got R.J. Barrett, you've got Kobe White, you've got Cam Reddish, a bunch of really big guys that you could go for here, and then we'll see what they do, and we're about to find out because their pick is in. With the third pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the New York Knicks select R.J. Barrett, shooting guard, Duke. There it is. With the third pick, the Knicks are going to go with R.J. Barrett. Now, it was questionable of who they would go with, but I think R.J. Barrett is definitely the right pick to take here. I think he's a safe bet. I think he's definitely looks like his game will translate to the NBA, whether it's his passing, his shooting. He's kind of spotty at times, but I think he can improve as a shooter. But I think he's really what New York could want here. I mean, obviously he's not quite Zion, but he's amazing point guard or shooting guard for a team to use because he can really play either position pretty well. I think, judging by what the Knicks are trying to do with getting KD and Kyrie, I think he'll really develop under those big players if they do get him. If they don't, even necessarily even better because now he's got more time, more ways to develop without having to give the ball up as much. But I think him going under the stars and maybe playing shooting guard or off the bench role, I think could be really good for him. He's definitely one of his weaknesses is he's very favors the left side. I think as he gets to the NBA, he will definitely have to go to the right more because he's left-handed, so he tends to favor that left more. But I think as he gets to the NBA, should start to change how he goes to the lane, how he finishes, and his moves. For me, my player comparison for R.J. Barrett is James Harden. Now, obviously, he's not Harden right now and might not ever be Harden. But if we're looking at what he could be and what his game kind of looks like, I'm definitely going with Harden. I think the playmaking ability of R.J. is similar to that of Harden. Not necessarily the shooting yet, obviously, but we've seen him make some Harden-like plays with shooting and finishing in the lane. I think it's definitely Harden-esque the way he finishes and some of his moves he makes to get open. I think that's definitely a fair comparison for him. Wow, R.J. Barrett, number 3. Okay. Now on the clock now is the Los Angeles Lakers, who have obviously won out here. I mean, they were supposed to get maybe the 11th pick, and they're up to the 4th. So, I mean, this is a big deal for them. I think they could trade this pick, but if they do take it, I mean, there's plenty of people still on the board. I mean, you still got Cam Reddish. He's still on the board. You got Darius Garland. You got Bull, Jarrett Culver. We'll see who they take because looks like the pick is in. With the 4th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Los Angeles Lakers select Jarrett Culver, shooting guard, Texas Tech. There it is. Los Angeles Lakers take Jarrett Culver with their 4th pick. Now, I think this is a great pick for the Los Angeles Lakers. I think it adds shooting, which is what they desperately need. I think it gives them a little bit even more young talent. I think it's a really good player to pair with LeBron because he's a good shooter, as well as he doesn't have a huge ego, so he can really learn under LeBron. LeBron will give him the shots he needs. We'll find him when he's open. I think it's a really good player to add to the Lakers. I think he definitely adds more defense to the Lakers for sure. We saw what that Texas Tech defense did all throughout the March Madness tournament, and it was suffocating defense, and I think adding defense to the Lakers is definitely something that they needed, and I think it will help them big. One downside to Jarrett Culver is he's a very streaky player. He can be up and down in his shooting and when he's hot, but I think that will probably flatten out as he gets to the NBA, and I think he'll be consistently good. Maybe not immediately, but after a few years, I think for sure. I like the look of this player a lot, and I think he'll fit on the Lakers just fine. If I'm going to compare to any NBA player, I would definitely say he's a more lengthy Chris Middleton. I'd say he's a better defender than Chris Middleton, but I can see him becoming a Chris Middleton-like player. Someone who can shoot off the dribble, shoot off the catch. Doesn't have to be the primary role, but can be that 2 or 3 guy that on a championship team. So I really like that pick for the Lakers. I think it's great for them and for their future, for what they're trying to do. Now on the clock are the Cleveland Cavaliers. We'll see what they need. We'll get here. They definitely need some sort of either big or forward here. We'll see what they pick. You still got a few forwards on the board. You got DeAndre Hunter. You got P.J. Washington. You got Jackson Hayes, the big man. We'll see what they pick because their pick is in. With the 5th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select DeAndre Hunter, small forward, Virginia. And the Cleveland Cavaliers do take a power forward, and that power forward is DeAndre Hunter. I think he's played power forward in college. I think he'll now probably move up to the small forward spot, fill that spot in for the Cavaliers. I think this is a great pick for the Cavs. I think he's a good pair for their new point guard. I think it's a good pair for Kevin Love. I think he'll be a very good role player on this team. I think, judging from his college, he's a very consistent shooter for the team. He's a good defender for the team. Personally, I don't think he'll be as good as people are making him out to be. I don't think he'll be a star necessarily. I do think he'll be more of a starter role player, which is still great, but a lot of people say he'll be very good. I don't think he'll be as good as people are making him out to be, but I still think it's a great pick for the Cavaliers. I think it fills that role they need with some shooting, some defense, some length. But he also comes up big in clutch moments, as we saw in the tournament and in the final. For comparison for DeAndre Hunter, I'm going to compare him to Al-Farouq Aminu. I know it's not the most flashy comparison, but I think comparing him to Al-Farouq Aminu is a good comparison because you've got the defense that he can do, also the spot-up shooting that's really good. He makes the shots when he needs to and can finish around the rim really well. I think it's a good comparison to do, and that's what I'm going to go with. Now on the clock with the number 6 pick is the Phoenix Suns. Now, I think it's very obvious what they need, and that's a point guard. They've got their shooting, they've got their center, now they need a point guard. And judging by who's on the board, you've got Darius Garland, you've got Kobe White. I think those are definitely the 2 point guards that could go right here. We'll see if the injury becomes a concern of Darius Garland and they end up going Kobe White just to play it more safe. We'll see what they do because the pick's in. With the 6th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Phoenix Suns select Kobe White, shooting guard, North Carolina. And the Suns do end up going with Kobe White. I guess the injury of Darius Garland was enough to make them take Kobe White, and I think it's a better pick for them, honestly. I think Kobe White, although he can play shooting guard or point guard, I really think he's a good pick for the Suns. I think he's more of a facilitator than Darius Garland, but I think he's more of a facilitator than a shooter, and I think they already have their shooter in Devin Booker. But Kobe White is a very, very quick, well-rounded guard. He's a great shooter, or a good shooter with his feet set. He can be streaky at pull-ups and stuff, but I think he's a good shooter with his feet set. I think it'll be good for them, for him to make the occasional three, because he won't always have to, because they do have Devin Booker. He's a good facilitator for the Suns, which they need. They needed a point guard. Kobe White is also a good defender. He adds defense at the point guard position or shooting guard position, whatever they decide to play him at. But I think he definitely adds a lot, whether it's playmaking, defense, or shooting. He adds a lot for the Suns, and the Suns really needed that, so I think it's great. As far as player comparisons, I think I have two comparisons for Kobe White. I have De'Aaron Fox in his quickness. He's a little shorter, a little bigger, so I think he could be more powerful than De'Aaron Fox, but he's definitely got the speed. He's got the facilitation, if that's a word. He can finish around the rim. His shooting is pretty good. And then another comparison I have for him is Austin Rivers. Austin Rivers isn't as fast as Kobe White, but I think as far as facilitating goes, and as far as shooting goes, I think he's very similar to Austin Rivers. He's a bit shorter, but otherwise I think it's a great comparison to make. Now on the clock with the number 7 pick is the Chicago Bulls. Now I think they're definitely disappointed with where they were at in having a 10% chance at the number 1 and falling all the way to the 7th. I think it's disappointing, but you still got a lot of talent on the board. You got Cam Reddish is still on the board. I've been saying that, I feel like, for 4 picks. You got Jackson Hayes still, Darius Garland still. We'll see what they go with. They could use a center, they could use a small forward, but they could also use a point guard. So a lot on the board. We'll see what they go with because the pick's in. With the 7th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Chicago Bulls select Darius Garland, point guard, Vanderbilt. And the Bulls do end up going with Darius Garland. I think this is a great pick for the Bulls. I think adding that point guard position can really take the load off of Zach LaVine, especially the type of shooting that Darius Garland holds. I mean, looking at him playing in college, the shots that he would take were really, really far out for the college. I think he's showed from NBA range, so I think he'll transmit his shooting from college to the NBA pretty quickly. And he's a great scorer, which I think can take the load off of Zach LaVine off of some possessions, so he doesn't always have to be scoring for the Bulls. But I think Darius Garland very easily could have gone in the top 4, 5 or 6, and he's dropped all the way to the 7th, and I think that's because of his injury and the fact that he only played 5 games this season for Vanderbilt. But I still think he showed what he had. He's a great facilitator. He's a great shooter. He adds a lot of shooting to the Bulls team, a lot of three-point shooting. Again, like I said, he relieves Zach LaVine's scoring because he can do it himself, and he's a great passer to the teammates, so he can find Zach LaVine or Lauri Markkanen or whatever he wants to do there, or Robin Lopez for a lob. Now, for a player comparison, obviously I am not saying he is this player, but if I'm going to compare his game to anyone, I'm going to say Stephen Curry. I think they're both a little undersized. Darius Garland at 6'2", Curry at 6'3", maybe. I think the shooting, Darius Garland has the very efficient, very deep-range shooting that Stephen Curry has. Obviously not the same caliber, but if we're looking at their game, he's a great ball handler, he's a great facilitator, he's a great shooter. I think all aspects that Curry has that I think Darius Garland shows. I'm not saying he's Curry, but I'm saying that's what his game is like. Now, on the board now, it's the Atlanta Hawks. Now, Hawks still on the board is Cam Reddish again. You got Jackson Hayes, you got PJ Washington. Still a lot of players on the board for them to take, and the Hawks, I mean, obviously very disappointed with their position. They had a very good chance to get the number 1 or stay in the top 5, but they're all the way down to the 8th. So we'll see who they pick. They could use a small forward. Don't need a point guard anymore. They've got a power forward. They could use a center. We'll see who they take because the pick is in. With the 8th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Atlanta Hawks select Cam Reddish, small forward, Duke. And the Hawks finally, after 8 picks, take Cam Reddish. Now, I think Cam Reddish is possibly the most talented player in the draft behind Zion. I think his shooting ability, his finishing ability, his athleticism, his length, I think it's all things that could really transmit to the NBA. But as we saw at Duke in college, he's kind of can be streaky at times. I wouldn't say streaky, actually. I just say like his production can be down, but obviously that could have been because he was on a team with R.J. Barrett and Zion, so we'll see. But he's a great shooter. That's obviously his best aspect. He's a good dribbler. He can dribble really well. And he's even a good finisher. I think he's got talent all around. I think he very well could end up being the best player out of this draft. Maybe not as good as Zion. We'll see. But I think he could be the best player out of this draft. He's very athletic around the basket. Adds even more shooting to the Hawks, so they'll be able to spread the floor even more. I think it's a great pick for the Hawks. They really can move him from small forward to shooting guard. He'll be a great pair with Trae Young, and I think that'll go really well for him. And if I'm going to compare him to someone, I'm going to say C.J. McCollum, because I think they both have a really very offensive, skilled game, whether it's finishing, shooting mid-range, shooting threes, ball handling, some passing. I think C.J. McCollum's a good comparison for him, and if he can become C.J. McCollum, that'd be great for the Hawks. Now on the board are the Washington Wizards. Now, they're in a tough spot here because obviously John Wall, with his injuries and his ludicrous contract, are really putting some struggles on the Wizards. But I think they could draft a point guard. I think the two best point guards have already been taken in Kobe White and Darius Garland, so I'm not sure if they're going to take a point guard because the talent behind there really drops. But they could take a center here, someone to pair with Bradley Beal, someone to pair with John Wall when he comes back, if Bradley Beal isn't traded. But we'll see who they pick because their pick's in. With the 9th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Washington Wizards select Jackson Hayes, center, Texas. And the Washington Wizards do end up taking a center, and that center is Jackson Hayes. The big man out of Texas did a lot of work in the paint on the defensive end. He was a great rim protector for his team. He really had a lot of blocks per game. He showed great defensive effort with his wingspan. I think that can be great use to the Wizards, have some paint protection. I think it's really good, but he did show a lack of rebounding ability, the lack to rebound the ball. Maybe it's because of how skinny he is. I don't know, maybe jumping ability, we'll see, but he kind of had a lack of rebounding ability in college for sure. But I think when he gets to the NBA, it's definitely something he'll work on now, and can work on, and we'll see if he improves that. I think one of his big things is he can catch lobs from guards, which is big when you're on the Wizards with Bradley Beal and John Wall. I think he adds length to the Wizards, which is great. And if I'm going to compare him to someone, I'm going to say Rudy Gobert, because he's not necessarily the greatest rebounder, but he's definitely an amazing paint protector, someone who can catch lobs and dunk it whenever he gets the ball down low. So I think it's a great pick for the Wizards. I think it'll improve them for the future and give Bradley Beal and John Wall some help down low. Now on the clock, again, the Hawks, this is because of the trade with the Mavericks, and since the Mavericks pick didn't end up being top 5, since it was top 5 protected, and now goes back to the Hawks, and that is with the Luka Doncic Trae Young trade from last year. Now there's now that they've taken Cam Reddish and they've added that shooting guard position, they could obviously take a center. A big center that's still on the board is obviously Bol. Or they could take a small forward. We'll see. There's a few other players on the board. You got Nasir Little, P.J. Washington, Rui Hachimura. We'll see who they take. Yeah. And the pick's in. With the 10th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Atlanta Hawks select Rui Hachimura, small forward, Gonzaga. And the Hawks do end up taking Rui Hachimura with their 10th pick. I think this is a great pick for them. I personally really like Hachimura. I think he shows a lot of maturity for a college player, for a basketball player. He's definitely a pro. I think he's a great defender for any team he goes to. He's got so much length, so much size. He played power forward position, but I do think that the Hawks are going to move him to small forward. because they already have John Collins. They'll move him to small forward. He's a good shooter for a team, a nice, consistent shooter. He's got a great jump shot. I think his shooting can improve when he gets to the NBA, and he'll be a great spot-up shooter for Trae Young to find, or to even create his shot, because we found he can create shots in the post, or even off the dribble a little bit, and some threes. He adds even more length to the Hawks with his long wingspan and his defensive ability. And again, his mature player profile that he has, I think he's a great guy along with a great player. And if I'm going to compare him to anyone, I'm going to say Kawhi Leonard. I know that's a big comparison. I'm not saying he's Kawhi Leonard. I'm just saying his player profile looks a lot like Kawhi. He's got the length, he's got the size, he's very mature, he's got the shot. I think he's a lot like Kawhi when he first entered the league, maybe even a bit bigger than Kawhi, muscular-wise and size-wise. He's very, very controlled. He's got good defense. He's got good shooting. It's not the best shooting, but I think he's got good shooting that can be improved on in the NBA. And, I mean, give him time, maybe he can become Kawhi Leonard with his defense and shot. I don't necessarily think he will, but I think he can get close to that. I think Rui Hachimura could end up being a great starter, maybe even an all-star in this league. A great pick for the Hawks. Really good for their team. Now, on the clock, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves. Timberwolves could really take any position here except for the center. I think they could go with a point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward. We'll see what they got. Obviously, you still got P.J. Washington on the... the pick's in. Sorry. With the 11th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves select P.J. Washington, power forward, Kentucky. And the Timberwolves decide to fill in that power forward spot in taking P.J. Washington from Kentucky. I think it's a good pick for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Although they kind of needed a point guard, I think P.J. Washington is a great pick for them. Adds a little bit more rebounding to take the load off of Cat. I think it's really a good pick because although there is a lack of shooting ability from the outside from P.J. Washington, I think that can develop as he gets to the NBA over time. But he's a very strong, athletic player. He's got a lot of speed for his size. I think he's a great pair for Cat. I think it really relieves some of the scoring, some of the rebounding. I think it's really good for them. He's been able to take advantage in ISO situations with smaller guards. He's got good ball handling as well for his size. So I think he could take, again, the load off of Cat in multiple areas, defense, rebounding, scoring, and all of it. If I'm going to compare him to any player, I'm going to compare him to P.J. Tucker. They're very similar, whether it's in size, scoring, rebounding. Not necessarily the shooting per se, but I think P.J. Tucker is very similar to P.J. Washington and the other way around in that they're very good at driving and finishing. They're very strong, very good defenders, good rebounders. I think P.J. Tucker obviously isn't the greatest shooter, but he's a great shooter from the corners. He's an amazing shooter from the corners. I think that's something P.J. Washington could develop if he works on it enough. Could end up being a really good spot-up shooter for a team like the Timberwolves. That's it for P.J. Washington. We're going to move on to the 12th pick, who the Hornets are now on the clock. Now they're in a tough spot because they're not sure if Kemba Walker is going to leave or what will happen there. But they're obviously planning to get Kemba Walker back, so I don't think they're going to draft a point guard. I don't think there's a point guard good enough for them to really go for. They filled in that small forward spot with Miles Bridges last year in the draft, who's already progressing to be a great player. Personally, I think they should take a center, and I think the big pick, obviously, is Bol Bol, but there are a few other centers out there that they could take, and we'll see what they take. But let's go to the pick is in, I think. With the 12th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Charlotte Hornets select Bol Bol, center, Oregon. And the Hornets do end up taking Bol Bol. I think that's a great pick for the Hornets. Bol Bol obviously has some, I think his biggest thing is downside is he's got a lot of concerns for injury at his size. There's concerns there regardless, but judging by the fact that he already had a foot injury in his first year in college, I think kind of scared some people. I think very easily if he played the rest of that Oregon season and didn't get injured, he could go top 5 here in the draft, maybe top 10. But he's fallen to the 12th pick. I think he's an amazing rim protector, obviously, at his size with 7'4", I think, and still growing probably, being the son of Manute Bol. He's a very, very consistent shooter for the team. Although he only took about 25 threes, he connected on 13 of the 25 threes that he shot. That's over 50. That's about 52% from three, and that's amazing at his size. To have a guy that's 7'4", a guy that's quick, a guy that's coordinated, a guy that can shoot threes like that, that's amazing for the NBA. I mean, for the Hornets too, it'll stretch the floor. It's something we haven't even seen before, only in one other player, which I'll get to in a second. He also has good post-up abilities for his team, but I think obviously the biggest concerns are injury and if he can bulk up to be at that NBA size. And there's also been questions about his work ethic and whether he really wants to work to where he wants to get. And I think he'll have to if he wants to be a top center in the league and not just a tall guy who can shoot threes and not necessarily an amazing player, which I think he could be, but he'll definitely have to work to do it. If I'm going to compare him to anyone, might have seen it coming, but I'm going to go with Kristaps Porzingis. He's the other player that I was talking about who's 7'3" or taller and can shoot threes like a shooting guard. I think they're very similar, both in size. They both protect the rim really well. They both have a post-up game. I think Kristaps is definitely more of an all-around and polished player than Bol, but he's been in the league a while, so that's good and obvious. But I think that's the big comparison is Kristaps to Bol. And now we're moving on to the 13th pick, and the Heat are on the clock. We'll see who they take. I think they could use some scoring. Maybe a point guard, maybe a big man. Really could take anything in this draft. So we'll see what they take because the pick's in. With the 13th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Miami Heat select Romeo Langford, shooting guard, Indiana. And the Miami Heat end up taking Romeo Langford at that 13th pick. I think this is a good pick for them. I think, although there is a lack of consistency when shooting the three and from outside, I think it's really good because it'll provide a true scorer for the Miami Heat. He's great at driving to the basket, has an amazing first step. He's very quick. It'll add amazing scoring for the Heat, something they really needed now losing Dwayne Wade, who isn't even their main scorer, but he probably averaged one of the most points for the team. So now Dion Waiters can have some of the load lifted off of him of scoring, adding Romeo Langford. I think Romeo Langford also is a great defender for the Heat. Not only a scorer, but a great defender because he's got that very large, almost 7-foot wingspan for a guard, which is crazy. I think that adds so much defense for the Heat. I think it's a great pick for them moving forward. If I'm going to compare him to someone, I'm going to say Victor Oladipo. He's a little bit bigger, I think, than Victor Oladipo. Maybe a little bit smaller, but they're about the same size. Maybe not the same shooting yet, but I think he's got the defense like Oladipo. He can play defense like Oladipo. He can drive like Oladipo. He's kind of quick like Oladipo. I think that it's a great comparison to make. Now, moving on to the 14th pick, the Celtics are on the clock. We'll see who they take, whether they go international and take Doumbouya out of France, or if they stay local and take a different player. We'll see who they take. They're also in an interesting spot with whether they're going to lose Kyrie in free agency, whether they're going to trade Jason Tatum and others for Anthony Davis, whether they're going to trade other people for Anthony Davis. They're in a tough spot, but I think they could really take anyone here. Maybe not a center, because Al Horford has said he wants to stay there, and they also drafted Robert Williams last year. So we'll see who they take, because the pick's in. With the 14th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft, the Boston Celtics select Nasir Little, small forward, North Carolina. And the Boston Celtics end up taking Nasir Little out of North Carolina. I think that's a great pick for them. I think Nasir Little has a lot of NBA potential because of his wingspan, because of his defense, because of his athleticism. I think it's really a great NBA player, and I think he'll translate well. He's a great defender for the Boston Celtics. I think he'll add a lot of defense for them, as well as a good spot-up shooter. I think he can catch the ball from anywhere and take some good shots. I think he'll be able to improve his shooting in the NBA and add some shooting to the Boston Celtics. As well, he's a good finisher and he can catch lobs in the paint. Although he did come off the bench for North Carolina this season, I think he's got a lot of potential, some of the most potential in the draft. And I think it's really a great pick for the Celtics, adding even more young talent. For a comparison for me, I'm going to compare him to Domantas Sabonis of the Pacers. in that he's got length. I don't think he's as tall, but he's got length. He's kind of big. He can defend really well, like Sabonis, maybe be able to block shots, but he's also really good at finishing. And he's also got the ability of Domantas Sabonis has, which is a good spot-up shooter and can shoot pretty well. Another comparison I kind of made is Torrey Craig. Not as much of a popular player, but he's a great player for the Nuggets. The Nuggets. He's a good defender. He's a great defender to put on guys, but he can also finish around the rim, catch lobs, and make the standing shot or set shot when he needs to. And so I think that's a really good pick, and that wraps up the lottery picks for this NBA draft. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed this kind of simulation of the NBA lottery and what I think is going to happen. These were all my picks, judging off of research I did on mock drafts, player potential, what teams needed. Those were all what I thought teams would take without any trades happening, what I thought teams needed, what I thought they would take, as well as what I think some players look like and could look like when they get to the NBA. Thanks for watching. Leave comments if you think someone's going to take someone else that I didn't mention. And leave a like and subscribe. Thank you.